Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Okay, so this is a subject that, unfortunately, worryingly, is that a word? Is not far-fetched. So that's a scary thing. TLDR News Global, guys, great channel. Preemptive like, original link top of the description. And I know Brilliant.org is going to be a sponsor in the video, so if you do watch it with me and you're interested, you learned about it while watching it with me. Just make sure to use any promo codes and links. That will be, again, original link top of the description. Let's go. Is America headed for civil war? No, but that's not reassuring. Let's go. Let's learn, guys. Hope everyone's doing well.
When Donald Trump and his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth abruptly summoned America's top military brass from around the world to an unusual and short-notice meeting in Virginia at the end of September, it sparked a whole lot of speculation. Some suggested it might be for an oath of loyalty to Trump, while others dramatically evoked Saddam Hussein's infamous Ba'ath Party purge of 1979. In the end, it turned out to be something more akin to a TED Talk mixed with a political rally, with Hegseth laying out plans to release the military from any so-called woke restraints, and Trump delivering a politically charged speech to the room full of generals and admirals, in which he vowed to make greater use of the military in US cities, claiming that the country was facing a, quote, war from within, and suggesting that cities like Chicago, Portland, and Los Angeles should be, quote, training grounds for the military. So in this video, we're going to look at what Trump and Hegseth actually said, whether they're taking the US to the cusp of civil war, as some have implied, and why, even if the answer's probably no, this all still threatens to accelerate a pre-existing and dangerous trend in America, namely the politicization of the military.
This is, I do find comparisons of America to Nazi Germany in the early 30s as a bit of an overstatement. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that. But this is definitely a giant precursor that a ruler with autocratic tendency, this is how they can accomplish it. Is if you get your military completely on your side, you can turn into like a Caesarian figure, where it's like if you have military loyal to you, then you really can have a coup, you know? So this right here, bad news. Oh my god, please tell me audio's working. Yes.
Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. So let's start with a quick look at what Hegseth and Trump said in their speeches to military leaders. Hegseth's address centered on his efforts to rid the military of what he deems woke influence, and instead promote a warrior ethos across its ranks. Hegseth said he'd imposed the highest male standard for all combat roles, hitting out at, quote, fat troops and suggesting twice-yearly fitness tests, emphasized the importance of grooming standards, insisting on, quote, no more beardos, defended his firing of several top military officers, suggesting they'd been promoted based on their race or gender, announced he would curtail whistleblower and complaint procedures, and empower drill sergeants to instill a healthy fear in new recruits. On the role of the military, Hegseth said bluntly, you kill people and break things for a living. And on the rules that set out when and how the military can use force, he said, no more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement, just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters. As for Trump, much of what he said, from tariffs to the border to Joe Biden, was what you'd expect from any other of his speeches.
I did see parts of Hegseth's speech, and one of the kind of comical things he said was that, you know, when it comes to the fitness standards of soldiers and commanders, he says we need more people like Patton, I forget one other person he mentioned, and Schwarzkopf, who was the general during the first Gulf War. And Schwarzkopf isn't exactly known for being very well in shape. So I thought that was kind of funny how he's like, we need healthy looking, fit generals just as well as soldiers, and then use Schwarzkopf as an example. I'm like, well,
But what drew most attention was Trump's comments on the role he envisions the military playing in the domestic arena. Having already deployed National Guard troops to Democrat-led cities like Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. and Portland, and promising future deployments to Chicago and elsewhere, Trump said the military should use dangerous American cities as training grounds, adding that the US was facing a war from within, and calling on the military leaders gathered before him to handle the enemy from within before it gets out of control.
Training grounds for what? For what exactly?
This apparent enemy, according to Trump, is, quote, no different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. Unsurprisingly, Trump's talk of the enemy within and the idea of using American cities as, quote, training grounds for the military in the context of what looks like an emerging era of heightened political violence sparked some online chatter about the prospect of civil war in the US. Now, we've got to say, we don't think this is sensible, not least because, well, the cities that Trump is talking about are nowhere near as violent or beset by unrest as he likes to imply. Portland, for instance, the current focus of Trump's attention, has previously been described by the president as war-ravaged, with immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE, facilities, quote, under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists, which is presumably why earlier this month Trump posted on Truth Social that he was authorizing full force, if necessary, by the National Guard. But this characterization has been widely refuted by local residents and politicians.
Okay, again, making the military to try and weed out the people that are less supportive of you and your administration, and using American cities as kind of training grounds and making it more normal for American soldiers and National Guard to go into cities. That is two other reasons as to, you know, making your military more loyal to you and using them in American cities. Not a good sign, to say the least.
While there have been persistent protests outside an ICE facility, with occasional clashes between agents and protesters, there's nothing like the levels of unrest that Trump has described. Portland Police Chief Bob Day said National Guard troops were not needed, and that the protests have been confined to one small block, in an otherwise big city which local law enforcement can handle. Nonetheless, the Trump administration's apparent willingness to fold the military into political disputes, fire high-ranking officials for apparent political reasons, and deploy it in domestic contexts will still probably accelerate a pre-existing trend, namely the politicization of the military. For context, in the US, as in most liberal democracies, the relationship between the government and the military is supposed to be governed by the principle of civilian control. In other words, the military is supposed to be ultimately subordinate to the civil authority, i.e. the elected government. To this end, it's important that the US military is politically neutral. The US military is supposed to be equally subordinate and responsive to Republican and Democratic administrations alike. This should also help preserve public faith in the military, even while Americans' faith in other institutions is declining. Defining what exactly it means for the military to be politically neutral is difficult, especially because, well, military officers are in some sense experts, and will thus have well-informed opinions on war and geopolitical strategy. These might naturally align more with the views of one party than the other, and in these cases the line between providing expert advice and political lobbying becomes somewhat blurred. Nonetheless, even with this caveat, it's clear the US military has become more politicized in recent decades, and this trend precedes Trump. Political commentators generally point to George H.W. Bush's use of veteran endorsements in the 1988 presidential campaign as a beginning of a Republican-Democrat arms race for veteran endorsements, which has escalated at every election since. Similarly, presidents have become increasingly willing to appoint veterans to civilian positions in their cabinet and use uniformed officers in photo ops. In Trump's first term, General Mark Milley was criticized and ultimately apologized for accompanying Trump in a staged photo op in front of a boarded-up church during the George Floyd protests. And Biden was criticized for placing uniformed Marines beside him during that backlit speech he gave about the risks to American democracy. But while this trend clearly precedes Trump, he threatened threatens to supercharge it, especially if he and Hegseth continue to fire high-ranking officials over what do seem to be political disagreements over quote-unquote wokeness. Republicans might argue that the Democrats essentially started it by imposing wokeness in the first place, but the ultimate effect is the same, a more politicized military. This is bad for a whole load of reasons. It undermines public trust in the military. It means the military has to spend more time worrying about politics and less time preparing for battle. And perhaps most importantly, it undermines the fundamental principle of civilian control, threatening to ultimately upend the balance of power between the military and the government. Ultimately, we live in a world where growing geopolitical and economical issues like these are hitting the headlines.
So, I'm about to go into sponsor, which I will watch. But I do think the Biden use of military personnel behind him and George W. Bush, the older George Bush, looking for like approval from like veterans. I don't think that is nearly as controversial as what the Trump administration is doing for the military. So
trend precedes Trump, political and the government. Headline doing brilliant. Know that the
This is a great video, guys. I'm going to watch through the sponsor. Hope everyone's doing well. Very interesting. Would love to hear your comments.
way to do so is by using Brilliant. That's because Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning techniques to train you in the principles behind otherwise complex subjects, and ensuring that you actually understand what's going on. With their ever-growing collection of lessons in topics ranging from maths to science to AI, there's plenty to get you started. Not only does each lesson offer a comprehensive mix of engaging problems and competitive features, but Brilliant also helps you stay...
Guys, I do have one more big comment I want to say at the end of this, so please don't just leave because you think it's the end of my talks with
consistent,
the sponsor.
Keeping you motivated and excited to learn every single day. Take their newly updated science courses, for example. Here you can learn how to build simple computers out of logic gates, or open your eyes to the world around you by solving puzzles with science. Each lesson will help you develop your scientific intuition through visual interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. Try Brilliant for free and start your learning journey today by visiting brilliant.org/TLDR.
Special use of TLDR, guys. Again, it's not just the right thing to do, but it also not only good for, you know, the discount you'll get by using the TLDR code, but I'd imagine sponsors will get their data about how well a channel that they're sponsoring is funneling people to them, which is the whole point of sponsors in the first place. And then he could end up, you know, getting more money and stuff. So just the right thing to do.
Scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link in the description.
So great video. Here's my last point that I kind of talked about earlier, but I just want to solidify it here. The most worrying thing about what Hegseth and Trump are trying to do, I remember in Hegseth's speech saying that, you know, giving all of his points about how he wants the military to change and recruitment to be, to change, process to change. The most worrying and he said, like, if any of these things I'm saying are giving you a pit in your stomach, you know, maybe you should just resign, all right? And we will thank you for your service. The problem, giant problem with that, danger, huge danger with that, is that, you know, you can have a January 6th type event. It's not going to succeed, right? What will succeed with a coup that you want to enact, to try and push a coup, is you need the military to be on your side. And if you start filtering out the people who aren't directly for you militarily, ideologically and military, and you just start filling it with people who are in agreement with you and your policies and your ideology, that makes it easier for a potential coup to happen with the military. That is terrifying. So, love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. If anything I said sounds stupid or wrong, incorrect, call me out. You guys are great at answering any questions I might have had. Would love to hear your thoughts on the video and my my thoughts on. Love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts on the video and the thoughts on the video. So, love y'all. See you guys next time. Hopefully, we'll keep on learning together. Chin up. Don't worry. Emotions are fickle. You'll be okay. Bye, guys.